right, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of Independent Thought. Thank you for joining me with this special debate panel I have here. I have 5 great panelists talk about the crisis in Ukraine tonight. We're just going to first, before we get into the topics, we're going to have everyone introduce themselves, talk a little bit about themselves, their platform. I'm going to start up here on my top left with Jordan. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Desmond. I'm glad we were finally able to set this up and get me on. Yeah, I host the 805 Uncensored podcast. It mostly focuses on politics, but I talk about music, I interview authors, activists, talk about spirituality and philosophy, but primarily leftist politics. And politically, I would say that I identify as an anarcho-communist.
Perfect. Next, we're going to go to Fresh Faces, New Ideas.
I'm Fresh Faces New Ideas. I used to stream every day. I don't anymore. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday-ish. I'm a Bernie bro, and I talk mostly politics. I don't argue theory as much. I mostly argue policies. That is my expertise, where I yell at how dumb policies currently are or are not effective. So that's what I do, and I'm always willing to talk to pretty much anybody about anything.
Perfect. Winner Gets Nothing. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great. I'm Tom from the Winner Gets Nothing podcast. If you're into politics, don't go there. It's just a comedy. It's a comedy news show. We try to stay away from politics though. But yeah. As for where I lean, definitely on the anarcho side, but probably a little more right leaning. I don't really think there's a good label for it though.
All right. Down the bottom right, Six Samurai. Welcome to the first time on the show.
Thank you. It's actually my first panel. I've been streaming for maybe 2 months now, and if you wanted me to really nail down a political stance, I'm definitely left-leaning. I don't have as much of theory knowledge to nail down quite as well as Uncensored has, but I would definitely call myself at the very least a socialist, as much as one can be in a capitalist society, if you know what I mean. As far as the channel, you'll find we do a lot more gaming content. We're very lighthearted. Politics is usually kept to one specific area. You know, I'm trying to create a nice, fun community for everyone to come into. Everyone's welcome. I'm happy to learn. If anyone here feels that they could educate me a little bit afterwards, you're more than welcome.
All right. And finally, North Countryman.
I'm North Countryman, and I have 10 years of political education, 7 of which is my own, 3 of which was teaching college freshmen. I don't recommend it. I do this. I stream occasionally on Twitch. On a bit of a hiatus right now, but that's because I'm working on learning how to video edit, because I want to eventually put shorter, quick videos up on YouTube so people can learn, kind of politics 101, which is why I do what I do. I want to give people that baseline knowledge. Where I lean, I am a policy-focused center-righty.
All right. So we are here today to talk about the Ukraine, Ukraine being invaded by Russia. There's no really other way to put it as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to start off with a few different topics here. We're going to give everyone a chance to do their opening statements, and then we'll open up to an open discussion. So, very first question, basically just getting right into it. Who do you believe is at fault for this conflict? Some people say that it's rightly Russia, as they've invaded the Ukraine. Other people say that the U.S. and NATO have been antagonizing Russia for years, and they're just defending themselves. Kind of want to see where everyone starts on this. Actually, I'm going to start in reverse order. So, North Countrymen, where do you think the fault lies for how this conflict arose in the first place?
Quick question. Can we swear on this?
Yes.
Okay. It's Russia's fault. Mearsheimer's a fucking idiot.
Okay.
Russia's the one that invaded. Their idea that, NATO's encroaching on us. Being near you is not threatening you. You have to actually do something hostile. This, to me, is either one of 3 things. It's either an ego boost move by Putin. It is a attempt to get natural resources. It's access to a seaport. It's in the Mediterranean. All of which he could have gotten by negotiating with Ukraine. You give me something, I'll give you these things that you want. Nope, he went with an invasion, and now he's going to face the consequences. It's Russia's fault.
All right, short and to the point. Six Samurai, what's your take on this? Whose fault is this for this invasion?
Well, if it makes it easier, you can call me Sixth. That works too. I know it's a mouthful.
All right.
But honestly, me and North Countryman, we are on the same page. I just got a couple things that I wrote down about it to specifically prove why that. First thing, it's really hard to deny which country's military crossed which border. I don't see Ukrainians currently in Russia bombing Russian cities. If you want to just play at that level, surface level, yeah, it's kind of obvious. There's also the excuses that were used for an invasion, the chief of which being Nazis that needed to be dealt with, which, first off, I could argue that even existing to begin with, and second off, I'd ask why you see that even as an excuse for invasion. If that's a good excuse, then why haven't we invaded practically every nation on Earth? Especially when you look at the actual numbers of Nazis in Ukraine compared to every country around it, including the one currently invading it. And I'd be amazed if someone could honestly give me a good reason why Russia's not entirely at fault right now.
All right. Tom, what is your thoughts on this? Who is at fault for the invasion?
Sorry, should have my mic on. Well, I gotta say, I mean, well, to your point that Russia did invade, yeah, I mean, they did cross the border, but I don't think it's completely like in a vacuum. There's definitely been some encroachment by NATO. Like, I understand where we say there's already countries touching it and stuff, but they've moved quite a bit since the 90s, which I think there was an agreement for a while, or at least like seemed like there was an attempted agreement that we wouldn't push past like East Germany. And I don't know, it feels like we're way past that. So I just feel like I need that addressed before we're completely not at fault. I mean, we're moving towards them. I mean, I don't think it's great that he invaded. I mean, there's definitely blame to go all around, but I don't know. Like I said, it's not in a vacuum.
All right. Fresh faces, new ideas.
Well, the country invading is usually the one at fault. Look, as for the encroachment, the NATO agreement was more kind of like a handshake agreement, similar to how, if you've seen the origin of the McDonald's movie, how instead of actually signing the papers, they're like, hey, we'll give you the shares just on our word. It's kind of that way. And also the current actions of Russia explain why NATO exists. Like, they're making the wrong point that they're trying to do. Their claims are basically across the border nonsense. We've known that this is going to be a thing for a while. The real question, the real shocker for all of this is just how inept they've been. But no, they're at fault. That's why they have an ever-changing set of excuses. If your reasoning for doing something is constantly changing, then you're probably doing the wrong thing.
All right. Final opening statement, Jordan.
So I think that it's both. I think that it's like 80% the fault of the Russians. However, I still think there is some fault on behalf of the West, especially with regards to our ambitions for natural gas and the world's remaining addiction to oil. So it's definitely an imperialist dick measuring contest move by Putin. However, there is some fault on behalf of the West, particularly Western Europe, like Germany.
All right. Well, everyone had their opening statements. I'm just going to open up the panel a little bit here. Does anyone want to push back on somebody else's opening statement?
Well, I did want to.
Yep.
Go ahead, Six. You got to go
What
first.
did you mean?
All right, fair enough. I did want to mention, talk about the NATO promise to not move east. That there's a couple issues with that. For one, Putin only brought this up in 2007, I think is the first time he actually did, and he made claims about what was promised to the Soviet Union, which doesn't exist anymore. So an agreement to a group that doesn't exist is kind of hard to uphold. Also, NATO doesn't move. People apply to NATO and they join NATO. NATO doesn't invade a country and then set up a military force. No, you apply, you are accepted, and God forbid, if a country beside Russia wants to join NATO, that is their prerogative. If Russia is the one that's looking at NATO as an enemy, I'd say that's a problem. There's no reason Russia should be seeing NATO as an enemy to begin with. We could easily work together. There's no need for it. It's Putin, like he said, what was it? Imperialist dick measure. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, the entire point of the organization is to prevent another world war.
It's only in that set of areas. Like, it's not like we don't have other treaties with other countries where, like, China's getting mad at our treaties with, like, Australia and stuff.
Is
So
it a
they
smart
are-
and I've
idea
actually-
though to antagonize somebody who is obviously says he's willing to use a nuclear weapon? I mean, is that a smart move on the part of NATO? Could they have maintained more peace had they not offered membership to those like Baltic states, for instance?
It was, like, in the early 2000s.
True.
When
but
we're
Putin
talking about
wasn't
somebody
in
who
power
is...
at that time.
Right, but like the idea that like he was going to use nuclears. Now I think that overall this is probably it's a ploy. Now so like this is going to sound bad, but it's like the best way to look at this. So that Saturday or Sunday, when everyone got the alert that Russia was going to put their nuclear missiles on a higher alert, which is a thing that they technically always have, like the U.S. and all other nuclear powers have them as well. Was a scary sight, like I imagine for most people, because everyone's like, yeah, nuclear war, end of that's it, like it's over. The upside to this is because of how they started this battle, had the ability to escalate without immediately going to nukes at some point. So as bad as the actual damage that they're going to do to civilians, started off with that, there wouldn't have been the escalation to it would have been a nuclear escalation. So because they had the ability to be more brutal, not something that I'm advocating for, it is more of a it's a ploy. I don't actually think they're going to fire nukes. But on the off chance that I'm wrong, I don't really think there's going to be that many people who are going to sit there and say, "Ha, fuck you, you were wrong." So I don't know.
I'm not going to be alive to do so.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm either right or it doesn't matter.
Contingency.
To throw in a bit of theory, there's the idea that nations are rational actors. They're not going to do something that's not going to be a net gain for them. If they invade and don't think, or if they launch nukes, Putin and the Russians know, oh yeah, this is going to be really bad. But what they did with Crimea, they've demonstrated, okay, I can take a little bit of this country and then hold on to it. I'm going to get in trouble, but I still got the thing. So,
actually, I want to
kind of like they're like a kid asking how many cookies they can get before dinner, before they get their hands slapped. Yep.
I want to address that a little bit because in some of like the research that I did into Putin, it kind of just dawned on me. And again, this could be just my bad interpretation. So if you guys feel differently, tell me. It seems like Putin is a raging nationalist, and so there's a part of me that wonders if he would actually fire a nuke for the sense of like the glory of Russia or something along those lines. I don't think he's as solely money driven as maybe like the West is when they invade a country. That was just my interpretation.
Most former Soviets are led by nationalists. Even like Central Asia, like if you look at Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, they had nationalists. I think one of them they've got a technocrat, but that's not important.
Yeah, I mean,
nationalism typically responds once communism falls.
Putin himself was a fucking former KGB agent.
Yeah, I mean, he grew up in that area, in that era. He grew up in the era of the Cold War, so much so that he applied to be in the KGB. I mean, I feel like he is a true believer in like the glory of the Russian Empire. So I mean,
he absolutely wants to bring back the USSR.
Just the communist part of it.
They don't have.
Yes.
They look. That's the thing is they can't reactivate all the states. I think the largest like thing that came out of this, at least on a military level, is how like incompetent they've been. Like it certainly makes those at least.
Yeah, the losses are insane. Ridiculous.
Not even just the losses. It's the things that they're doing. Like for example, this convoy, this 40-mile convoy. There was a thing that happened during Vietnam called the Highway of Hell, where essentially in Vietnam, they took a convoy like this and they blew it to hell for 10 hours. And they're not sure how many vehicles are destroyed. The number is somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000. And this was in Vietnam. Like, you imagine if the Ukrainians, like, apparently they fucked with it a little bit, but, like, if NATO got involved, if they tried to do this shit against NATO, that thing would be wiped out, like, immediately. The level of, like, just their inability, because when we were talking about this, I imagine those of us who were streaming or talking about this, the general census was, yeah, they were kind of going to just roll over Ukraine, and then basically the best hope that Ukraine had would to be ultimately turn it into itself into like another Afghanistan, where it's another sinkhole. And they just went through like guerrilla tactics eventually. That didn't really happen.
I
made a
agree
lot of
with that.
mistakes.
The Ukrainian resistance has been extremely fierce, a lot more than I think people in the West were expecting.
It's more than the Russians were expecting because they didn't have this type of resistance when they took Crimea. It's also part of what their rationale was.
Do you think
Their
it's
entire plan was for one day.
We have this there's this BBC, or the BBC is the one that I had. They accidentally released an article. The Russian newspaper released an article about them having victory that they wrote like on the 26th. Yeah. Like they thought they were going to do this like immediately. And the fact that like we're like over a week in and they've captured like maybe 2 major cities. I'm not sure because I don't have a map of the Ukraine and the names.
I think it was 2 major cities, but they can't hold any of the land outside the cities because as soon as they do, they get ambushed.
I mean, there is the level of how inept this has been, and like the way the Ukrainian people have fought back is like incredible. The biggest fear now is the level of brutality that they're going to start aiming at civilians, and the idea that it's kind of okay to fire missiles around a nuclear plant, which even if you're trying to take a nuclear plant on the basis of like it's because a lot of their energy is produced through nuclear plants. Firing missiles at it should be like, don't do even if it was like a little exaggerated that night, like where the missile fire and the actual fire took place. General safety measures for any type of commander would be like, hey man, like the nuclear plant, like leave it the fuck alone.
Fuck off.
Haven't they already mistakenly punched a hole in the sarcophagus? Didn't that already happen during this?
I don't know what that is.
I can't confirm, but I did hear that as well.
The sarcophagus is what's covering the reactor at Chernobyl.
If that gets punctured, it's basically
I thought it was a
game
literal
over.
sarcophagus. I'm thinking, wait, what?
The fire
like
itself, before it was extinguished, it came within 1,500 feet of the reactors.
We're talking about Chernobyl or the larger one?
The larger one.
Yeah, the one that's like the largest in Europe, I think it is, or at least Eastern Europe.
Yeah, I think it's the largest in Europe.
It's like, let's just fight around this.
I mean, look, I don't know strategically, like it makes sense. Strategically, it makes sense you want to take away that type of power, but I don't know how you do that without like.
It has such a negative.
I think that actually goes to play into how the Russians are fucking up, because initially they never touched any of these sites. They were hoping to rush their way into the capital and take down all the resistance and not even need to fight there to begin with. Now that they're all their options, they couldn't even do that. Now that they're out of options, they have to shell them. Chernobyl wasn't an active station, it's not nearly as important. It's just, as long as they don't damage the actual containment around Chernobyl, we're all good. Which is, nobody's really going there. I don't see why they would defend that specific spot. Russia's not going to want to take it. Yeah.
There's a bridge there that go up. I think there's a bridge there right to Kyiv.
You were right, because it is just north of Kyiv, so that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, they did. I think they did destroy it.
Yeah, because Chernobyl itself has no real strategic value. It's a wasted nuclear facility. It's literally a death trap. Stay away from it.
Is it Kyiv or Kiev? Because like I've been there, and I swear they were saying Kiev, and I've only heard
who's saying it. If you're a Westerner, it's Kyiv. If it's somebody who's there, they say Kiev.
Kiev, Kyiv. I've heard like 15 different pronunciations.
I was
whatever floats your boat,
but I have no idea.
It's their Louisville.
Same with Kharkiv. I don't know.
I've heard
the second largest city. Kharkiv.
Yeah.
There's too many K's in all their names. That's the real issue.
I actually looked this up. I wanted to see how many letters were in the Ukrainian alphabet, and it's a lot more than I thought. There's 33.
Nice.
Oh, you got some numbers.
I want to possibly take the conversation in a direction on the idea of the civilians fighting back, because at first I thought, that's great, they're doing that, and I thought, you don't have to declare a tank that you capture on your taxes to be pretty completely based.
Right.
But then I was listening to a retired colonel who actually streams on Twitch, who really knows his stuff, and he was saying like this is actually not a good idea because now, the formal military units can't really tell. Okay, is that a civilian or is that a potential combatant? So do we want the civilians to be actively fighting back? And if not, what's the plan?
There's a reason that soldiers using civilian clothing is a war crime, because civilians are given special protection during war. So exactly what you're saying, civilians doing this is taking away that protection. So now your average Russian soldier can't trust a civilian. They might as well be a Ukrainian soldier or someone wearing a press uniform, for example, because hell, that'll get you behind enemy lines pretty quick, and you just plant one bomb and oh no.
They just fire on Sky News like a day or two
I was
ago.
going to say, I just saw that Sky News
Yes.
video where they were getting shot.
That shit was crazy.
I mean, to be fair, like it's not like Americans don't fire on news journalists during like protests and shit all the time anyway. I think was it in DC that we fired on Sky News too? Was that who they gassed? On the Lafayette Square might have been Sky News as well. Yeah, I know it's some Australian group. But no, like, look, this is the hardest question for the Ukrainians, because if they're not going to fight, they lose like a huge chunk of their soldiers. Because apparently they've held them like if you're between 18 and 60 as a male, I don't believe you're allowed to leave.
No, you have to fight.
Right.
That seems like a problem, because you should be able to allow them. I mean, it's not like this is already going to be a humanitarian disaster. I think I saw the numbers say it's at 1.4 million refugees.
Ukraine is about 45 million people too, just for like context on how many people that is.
And these aren't all just Ukrainian refugees. Like, some of these people are people who left like Afghanistan.
Yeah, isn't there like 3 million people in Kiev?
Well, that's the population of the city. Who knows how many people are still there today? I'm sure a lot of people have left. And
put it down to like probably 1 million now.
Yeah, people have been.
Yeah, and there's millions and millions still trying to get out.
Yeah.
Somebody else in the Discord?
I think so.
I see another
I just
face.
joined. I'm nosy because I don't know. Hi.
Oh, hi, Bank. How you doing?
I'm okay.
Well, hello.
Well, hi. What are we talking about?
Russian civilians or Russian soldiers.
Russia and Ukraine.
Russia and Ukraine. Cringe. Cringe.
Yeah, no, but like this is like the question that's really this brings up to one of the American points that like drives me crazy, is this thing that started like right after. It's like, oh, Russia wouldn't have done this to a country that had a Second Amendment. And my response to that is, okay, so your logical explanation to this is a country with an active army, but they're not going to invade because Bob on the corner has an AR. That's the rationale that you're putting on it. This certain level of sanctions, like if it's like a
I don't
national
support
team,
that at all.
like that's where you have to draw the line. It's how is it going to affect the people at the top? And it's like really cool that we're seizing boats and stuff, because maybe someday American oligarchs will pay similar prices, because they're like I was watching CNN today and they were talking about one of these yachts, and I thought back like 2 weeks ago they were talking about removing a historical bridge because Jeff Bezos's boat didn't fit through.
That was in Denmark.
The whole point is we have to go after the people who's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. We gotta go after.
Yeah,
Putin,
I think that was in the Netherlands.
Yeah, something like that. We have to go after Putin. We have to go after the oligarchs, like the top oligarchs. And look, their economy is going to be bad for a while. And I don't know, it's not going to immediately recover either when this is over. If let's say this ends in the way that Russia pulls out, the way the economy is going to bounce back from this is not going to be immediate. We've changed how economies function because of this. No, I think we've done about as well as we could. The circumstances.
All right, Tom, you're next.
I think we got to focus on the humanitarian aid. I think that's as far as we should go. Obviously, there's no level of intervention that we can do that's not going to lead to World War III. So yeah, sending aid is we can't do any more than that. But I think something we need to focus on is we need to ask like what Putin's mindset in all this is, because people just act like he's just crazy, but I mean, and to an extent, he is. There's one thing is he's extremely conspiratorial. Like he thinks all of like pretty much anything that's ever gone in the Middle East. I'm sorry, that's not a term anymore. I forget what the right thing is. Anyway, anything that's gone on in that region that's affected Russia, he believes is directly funded by the U.S. Like he wholeheartily believes we're responsible, even though it's really we just pay people back and forth, make enemies and friends with the same people week after week, just changing our alliances out there. So it could, at the end of the day, appear that we're funding all these people. But he believes that. He believes he's being cornered, and I don't know, he believes he's being boxed in. And we need to do, I don't know, something to calm down the man who has half the nuclear supply of the globe. I don't know. I just, regardless if he's right or if he's wrong, you just gotta be considering how he feels about it. Because, yeah, I don't know. That's the big problem.
Because he could kill us.
I think there's a video game called Calm Down Stalin. It's like a little indie game. It's very exact, 100% real.
Cool.
All right, 6, you're next.
All right, well, I'm glad to see that we all pretty much agree on this one, and the fact that right now I think we are doing the literal best thing we could be doing. Provide material support for Ukraine. Whoever wants to go and fight can. We're not going to support you. You don't be wearing your national flag, please. Don't start any bullshit. Just go there and help them. No-fly zone. If you had asked me that at the start of this, I might have stayed neutral on it, but listening to everyone and thinking on it, yeah, there's no way we can put a no-fly zone over Ukraine and not have NATO planes shooting down Russian ones, literally being a declaration of war. I don't want that.
Can I just... yeah.
Well,
hold on with
second.
the no-fly zone. Oh,
right. Well, say that for the open North Country and finish us off.
Yeah, you're right. Got it.
All right. So just a couple points. The reason why, no-fly zones, the most recent one that kind of worked was in Libya against Gaddafi, but part of the reason why that worked was Gaddafi was heavily using his air force. The rebels didn't have one, and there was a very clear east versus west. Ukraine and Syria, it's more neighbor v. neighbor, so it's harder to do a no-fly zone that way. As far as what the West should do, if it weren't for the fact that human lives would be at stake, I would be in favor of, direct military intervention. Like, if we could do this with robots, I'd be for it, but we can't. So honestly, what's going on with seizing assets, basically, doing what online lefties want done to Bezos, to Russian oligarchs, keep doing that. If Russia's still going at it in the next couple weeks, at that point, I'm going to say the West should consider doing. I actually want them to do cyber attacks. Not to the level of like destroying and causing lives, but no, drop their internet. They can't communicate. They can't get things going. Nope. You don't get to do that. The reason I want it in a couple weeks is because anything we do to Russians, they can do to us. But in a couple weeks, it'll be spring. So less damage to people sitting in the cold if they go after the electric grid.
All right. So before we open up to the main panel here, go ahead and Tom, go ahead and finish what you were going to say earlier.
Damn it, I gotta stop doing that. Anyway, the no-fly zone. Doesn't that also usually involve taking out anything that could take out your planes in that area, like
Yes.
Missile defenses? Yeah. So wouldn't that immediately be a declaration of war?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any kind of attack is just immediate, yeah.
In order to have the no-fly zone be implemented correctly, from what I've come to understand, is you have to go up to the border of whatever the no-fly zone is, and then you have to take out like anti-aircraft equipment, installations, what have you, like on the border of it. And the border of Ukraine is Russia. So you're going into Russia with fighter jets and you're destroying shit in Russia. I mean, there's no way they wouldn't take that as a declaration of war. There's just no way.
2 countries that control 90% of the world's nuclear warheads.
Happy we pulled out of the New START treaty. That's fun.
On that note, personally, I don't think Putin would actually be too afraid of trying to threaten with nukes. Whether he would use one is another question. My issue would be, Yeah, my issue would be is if the Russian military even allows it to happen, because like he can make the order, but it has to follow the chain of command. If one person along that chain just has to go, yeah, no, click, and we're fine.
Conversely,
And we've
one
already
person
have,
to say yes.
ironically, yes, but the same could apply literally any moment in time.
Yeah.
Someone could just go, yeah, and all of a sudden we're all dead. We all know that one famous example of the Russian submarine commander or the sub commander who stopped literally the end of the world because he said, no, we should wait until we get one more message from Moscow. If he didn't, we'd all be dead. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some level-headed people in the government somewhere. At the
I thought you were
very
going to make a Hunt for Red October reference right there. I swear.
No, it was there, but I didn't.
And like usually when like nuclear apocalypse has been closest, we don't know anything about it. It's like generally stuff that the public, they don't release that to the public when it's happened. But North, when you're talking about the cyber attacks, I imagine that we're kind of doing that anyway, because I know that was like one of the first things they did. They took down a couple of the Ukrainian sites, and I don't know how accurate this is, but apparently Anonymous has been going after it a couple. And my follow-up question is how effective can we be at this point? Because a lot of, at least for the Russian people, they're kind of insulating them. They're attempting to do something that's very weird, where they've given them access to like the extended world, and now they're going to cut them off from it. So for like cyber, I don't know how much of their infrastructure is going to be like available. We know for a fact that American infrastructure is not ready for any type of cyber attack. Like, where if they're even considering this, the amount of like they have to be like basically seizing all of, like, for Americans, the defense systems have to be for every single like infrastructure that we have, and because they're not like government owned, they've paid like no attention to it. We saw this like from like a group a year ago when they did it for that pipeline. We're not ready for look, we're not even ready for this. In 2016, they hit every single state's voting apparatus. For us to be like considering to do cyber warfare, we have to be like our cybersecurity has to be working like from 6 years ago to prepare for this.
Well, the better question actually on the cyber front is, at what point is a cyber attack a declaration of war in and of itself? I mean, if you hit their electrical grid, for instance, and knock out their defense system, would they take that as an act of aggression, I guess, on the parallel of being, declared war upon? I mean, because if you have your electrical grid taken out, I mean, you can't defend yourself. You don't know what's coming. I mean, you might just think of that as war.
That's a really...
So looking at the background on this, U.S. Cyber Command, they're the military branch that does this stuff. Their standard was disrupt, don't destroy. So, and the kind of thing I'm thinking of is not, make Russians freeze. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm thinking like Kremlin can't talk to their generals out in the field, which like, okay, nope, we got to get that back up. Delay what they're doing, make it harder for them to do what they're doing, at which point they say, all right, this is not worth it. We're going back home.
Right, but the question I have is,
that's what I say.
If Russia did that to us, like if someone like attacked the Pentagon cybersecurity and prevented us from being able to correspond with our troops in NATO on the front lines in the Baltic states right now, would we view that as a declaration of war?
That's a really contentious thing right now. There's a lot of debate over what part of cyber terrorism or cyber warfare actually would go as far to be a full declaration of war. I mean, a country could make anything a declaration of war. Oh, you stole $5 from our national treasury. It's war. That would be fair. Countries have gone to war for less. So
oil
there
embargo.
needs
Oil embargo will bomb your ships in your port in Hawaii.
Boom, right there. So
also, like, because I didn't look into this, what systems exactly in the government did the SolarWind hack get into? That was the largest government hack in history, and we did nothing about it.
From the sounds of it, it was just about everything you could imagine.
Yeah, so it's not like we have it. There's a precedent. I think realistically, the things that would like really escalate things is if you like turned off the power in Moscow or something. So I think North is kind of correct. I think this is kind of similar to the way I feel about the sanctions. As long as you're targeting it about infrastructure that either directly fucks with their military or like goes after like their high heads, like if you turn Putin's lights off. That's the thing. Now, the real problem we have with like U.S. involvement is warhawks. Sean Hannity and Lindsey Graham certainly are causing problems. I don't know if there is a less intelligent way to make things worse
don't
than
say the
what
Lindsey
Graham did.
No, I was gonna bring that up. Oh, you're killing me. All right.
You can go into it.
Okay, I was gonna say, is everyone here? Well, does anyone here support Lindsey Graham's tweet? Is anyone unfamiliar with what he said?
Nah,
I don't think legally any of us can.
You can twist my arm and I'd still say no.
yeah, just explain for me though.
Can we? Does someone have the tweet pulled up? Let me see if I can
pull
find
it
it
up
for you really quickly here. I know that I posted about it on Instagram. I think like a day or so ago.
Well, you find that? What? Go ahead.
Basically, he was advocating for. Here it is. Okay. Is there a Brutus in Russia? Is there a more successful Colonel Stauffenberg in the Russian military? The only way this ends is for somebody in Russia to take this guy out. You would be doing your country and the world a great service. The only people who can fix this are the Russian people. Easy to say, hard to do. Unless you want to live in darkness for the rest of your life, be isolated from the rest of the world in abject poverty, and live in darkness, you need to step up to the plate. And I love the fact that the number one comment underneath was, you're not supposed to call for assassinations on Twitter. It's against their policy.
Oh my god.
It's so impressively stupid.
Because look, we've gotten reports that like some of the oligarchs and the generals are like, okay, this is way more than we expected anyway. So there's so many layers of this being a bad idea. There's the U.S. official calling for the assassination of another world leader, which cool, sounds fun. I don't see why anyone wouldn't want to try to do that.
Yeah, we're
Totally chill.
We're only a year
in a
removed
video
from
game.
Capitol
There is-
being,
Roblox.
Now
Go Roblox.
This now exists as a talking point for the Kremlin, saying that this is all of their sanctions are now leading to regime change, which could actually sway some of the people who are already against this to possibly be before this. There is the least likely, there is the least unfortunate outcome, which is that had somebody been planning this, there is now going to be extra security about the people who are possibly had the ability to do this and made it more difficult for them to do in the first place. There is no good outcome from this tweet, which is really great. I'm super happy that Jamie Harrison lost to this moron who spent the last 2 weeks of his campaign basically saying as much racist, crazy shit as he possibly could, and that this is a person who is still respected. That's where we are. It may be the dumbest statement that will come out of the entirety of this event.
I want to push back on that a little bit. I think that we don't really need to give any ammo to the Kremlin or to Russia at all, because they basically have complete lockdown over the information and how it's disseminated through to their country, especially through their state TV. On top of that fact that Putin is having
cracked down on social media recently too.
Putin has like a zero tolerance for dissent in
Goodbye,
that
RT.
country right now. In fact, I actually have somebody who I'm speaking to like on Instagram who told me that she has a friend in Russia right now who tried to send money to her family member in Kharkiv, and the funds were actually like seized by the Russian government and blocked, and they accused her of possibly being a traitor for wanting to send money to her family in Kharkiv.
Just
Oh shit!
People who are like protesting this and sending them to either prison or to fight their conscriptions, right? Is that what it was? I haven't seen all the details for it yet.
Last time I checked, there was close to 2,000 people that went to jail for protesting in like the first day or two in St. Petersburg and Moscow.
The protests look huge, but as far as we've seen, they look huge.
Well, they're not huge anymore.
Right. And that's what's pretty amazing to me is the extreme repression that the Russian government has towards their people. And from the news footage that we've seen, there seems to be a lot of Russians are very against this war. and are getting into the streets. And if it gets even more popular, the anti-war effort, I think that could actually trigger a major civil war conflict inside Russia.
You know, there is a lot of
So
debate.
I don't know if it would go that far. It might just be a fairly painless regime change, because Putin alone is causing the issue. If they can, without being an assassination, fucking mind you, get him out of power, I see very little issue.
You know, there actually might be a debate about how widespread the dissent is. Like I was saying before, with Putin having control over state TV, he's been able to, from some reports now, the information is very murky about what is fact and what's not. But there are some reports that say there's a lot of people within the country who've been very much swayed by the reports from state TV, especially when they've been showing the carnage from the civil war in eastern Ukraine. They're blaming a lot of those deaths like on the Ukrainian government. There are people who, you know, are essentially ethnically Russian in those two, like, you know, Eastern republics, well, now independent republics. That, you know, a lot of these people, like, you know, they have family still in Russia. They were still part of the USSR just 30 years ago. So, yeah, Putin has manipulated the fuck out of the coverage that's coming into the country. So there are some people who are, in fact, pro this war in Russia. The balance is what seems to be a little murky, like how much of a divide there actually is.
Didn't
It's
we
also
just
Let's
also
remember,
pass-
in his most recent election, Putin won by like 77%. His main opposition is the Russian Communist Party. It's his successor is going to be who he picks.
Challengers.
I was going to say, you mean they're dead,
I
right?
was gonna say, yeah, those political assassinations on his side became a bit of a meme, if anything.
I think Navalny's in prison. I'm not sure if he's dead yet.
He was talking out about this.
Yet.
The first day. I think the best thing that came out of this was the fact that the first day it looked like there was a lot of anti-war sentiment. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, was we're about to see something very strange with how much they're going to crack down on this. I know one of their one of their last like free non-state televisions just went off. The radio shows just went off. It's going to be interesting to see like how information is going to spread. I know there was talk on at least Twitter of people like looking up restaurants, I believe, in Russia, and putting like reviews of it as that way, as a way to like disseminate information to people. Like there's gonna be some like
It's actually pretty brilliant.
There's gonna be some creative ways to get through to these people. I mean, it's gonna be kind of similar to dealing like getting information in and out of North Korea. You're gonna like put flash drives of like CSI Miami or whatever they do there. But it's like it's going to be very weird to watch this, because they've had access to all this stuff, and they know it's going to be repressive, and we're going to watch what happens under a full state brainwashing, essentially.
All right, we're going to switch topics here in a little bit. So if anyone else has like some like closing thoughts on this topic before we switch over, this is the time now.
I just had one quick thing I wanted to say. We were talking about cyber attacks, but have you guys also heard that Putin is threatening to take the war into space as well? Russian,
Sounds like more dick measuring to me.
the International Space Station.
Oh yeah, I did hear about
Russians are threatening to stop maintaining it and letting it just essentially crash into Earth. And then they're also
they have the power to do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'd be able to replace the astronauts. Yeah.
I think
the other satellites too that like operate major technology bases around the world. They could essentially just fuck with those and shut them down.
You know what?
That's a bigger concern.
Go ahead, Tom.
So with the space thing, there's a couple things. So if I remember correctly, there was a story a couple years ago where I believe it was a Russian astronaut who was drilling holes into the side of the space station anyway, and I don't remember why that was. But as for the actual ability for them to shoot, I think most of the rockets actually do come from Russia, like when we're shooting rockets up. So this might be one of the only things that came out of the good that came out of the billionaires dick measuring contest of their ability to actually help get astronauts into space. The real problem with them trying to do stuff in space is the clutter in the amount of asteroids and the amount of space junk in the lanes, because apparently the Starlink satellites are already starting to fuck with that anyway, because the International Space Station has had to take multiple evasive maneuvers around that. So I don't know how much more damage they could do for that, but like the potential damage for that anyway is catastrophic. I think essentially the second worst outcome outside of nuclear war would be just like a complete crashing of our satellite system, because there's so much shit up there that it just keeps shredding itself, and then we're stuck with like a shrapnel minefield surrounding the planet.
Yeah,
Tom,
I
did
mean,
you wanna-
if we can't use
Hold on a second,
technology,
everyone.
we would be completely screwed.
Tom, did you want to jump in? I thought I heard you a couple minutes back.
I mean, it wasn't a big point. I just, when we keep talking about these cybersecurity things, I mean, there's just so many different levels of it. I think the threat of itself, or cyber attacks, I mean, not cybersecurity, just the threat of the attacks, I think, is worse, because it leaves so much room. Like a cyber attack can be so many different things. So I think it's just more worrisome just thinking about like the level it could go to, which I mean is basically what we've all been doing, just speculating on all these worst case scenarios. It could even be small stuff though. Like imagine just how much chaos it would be to just, I don't know, shut off traffic lights in New York City for a few hours and take credit for it.
Absolute chaos. Absolute thousands dead. But you make a point, because it calls into question everything. Like, what if there's a glitch in the system and one dude freaks out thinking the Russians are hacking when it's just a glitch? And it's a point.
No flags,
Especially if you
like,
can't
that.
communicate that information. Like if people have no idea what the fuck's actually happening and everything is just paralyzed, people are gonna go crazy.
Yeah, God forbid we get a Breaking Bad situation where a guy has his daughter die and his plane crashes, and then we got to worry about that type of complaint. It's a cyber attack.
I hold the cyber attacks and the internet talk in the same category as the nuclear weapons talk, the incredibly hypothetical, no one really wants to destroy everything we've spent centuries trying to build up, especially Russia, who's already losing enough right now.
I mean, it only takes one person to do something.
He was talking too
crazy.
much about cyber.
I'm back.
CIA got him.
The Russians got me. The Russians attacked.
All right, I think we're going to move on to our final topic of the night. So it looks like we're going to be talking about, should the U.S. lift all restrictions and start drilling for more oil and gas to support Europe? The reason that this question comes about is because, for those who are unaware, Russia, I think their biggest export is oil and natural gas. They export, I mean, quite a bit to Europe. I think for Germany and Italy specifically.
12% of the world's oil.
Yeah. For Germany and Italy
40% of
specifically,
Europe.
they get, hold on now, you'll get a chance to talk. They supply quite a bit to those two countries. So the idea here in America is that if we start drilling more, we'll be able to offset what Europe's no longer getting from Russia. That way we can actually finally cut off their access to their biggest source of income. So I want to hear what everyone thinks about this. Should we be breaking out the drills here in America? Should people start fracking? Start with North Countrymen. Where are you at on this topic?
Yeah, so Russia definitely picked the right time to invade, because there's enough snow not on the ground that they can actually get through, but it's cold enough that Europe's going to think, oh shit, do I want the heat cut off? Unfortunately, in terms of drilling for more oil and gas, in most of these places, at least in the US, we're kind of at our capacity. So there's not much more we can do without a massive tech invest, or a massive, is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah, whatever. Massive amount of stuff put into into getting more oil and gas out. So yeah, it's a nice idea, but there's not a whole lot of room to go there.
All right, and sixth?
Well, kind of on the same point. I'm not entirely sure where these resources would come from, although I'm far from an expert on geological resources for the U.S. territories. You could easily point out 15 locations, and I'd be like, oh, okay, fair enough. But I don't think it would solve the real problem in the end. I mean, we're already hitting a point where we're trying to move away from these exact kind of products, and we're already having huge ecological disasters because of it. Fracking in itself is incredibly dangerous. Drilling is incredibly dangerous. I think it's the worst time for us to be ramping up exactly what we're trying to ramp down, even if it means that, oh god, gas prices are incredibly terrible. And right now, the gas prices today. Normally I'm Canadian, so we go by liters, and normally right about now it'd be about $1.30 for a liter. It's about $2 now, so we've had a slight increase.
A slight.
How much oil does Canada get from Russia?
Very, very little. We produce a lot of ours because we have the sand bank. How are they called? The sand fields. I can't remember the name of it. It's in Alberta.
Oil
and they
sands.
Thank you. The oil sands. That is producing a lot.
Yeah.
That's like where the Fort McMurray fire was, right?
South of it, yes, but oh man, that fire was devastating. But the oil that we imported was used for products, not like gas or anything like that. I looked this up because I was actually speaking with someone about this. I was under the impression we imported 0 Russian oil, but the amount we do, you can almost count on your fingers. You know, it's minuscule, and for us to finally cut that out is like, whatever. We'll talk to some other country for the tiny amount of oil we need. You know.
All right, I want to send it over to Tom next. Where are you standing on this? Should we be doing more fracking or not?
I think I'm kind of with North Countrymen, I guess, because I'm like, yeah, sure, we should do more, but hey, I guess we can't. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, with the area I'm in, I believe I've heard it's Massachusetts or whatever, but I've heard it's like a huge percentage. I don't know if it's 90%, but I know it's a large percentage specifically in my area gets their oil directly from Russia. So I know there's certain like regions of the U.S. that's going to be hit by this harder, but I might be wrong about that too. I don't even know. I'm just going off something I heard recently. I know there's parts of the U.S. that are heavily reliant on it, and yeah, anything we could do to alleviate that problem and not prop up Russia would be a good idea. But I don't know if we can do that.
Fresh Faces, new ideas?
So I was looking at some of these numbers because Bo of the Fifth Column had a whole bunch of videos on this, and I love watching Bo. I think it's brilliant. So first off, in the ideal, I'm really happy we don't have anyone pretending the idea that we destroyed U.S. Natural gas and stuff, because we're now producing more in 2021, 22, and 23 than we did in 2020. So that's just the thing. I was looking at the numbers. I think it's about 40% of the crude oil that the U.S. Receives is from Canada. Almost the entirety that we get from, in general, is from either Canada or Mexico. It's all from our neighbors. I think we get about 7% of our total crude oil from Russia. The real issue is the actual gas that we get there, like the hard gas, because the soft gas is what they've released, and it's a different type of petroleum. That's I don't know really how we solve that. Like, look, I think the real answer here is to crack down on corporate greed. All these gas companies are incredibly profitable. They're just entirely subsidized anyway, and I imagine if you threaten some type of subsidization in order to keep profit to keep their costs down, they could do that. But the other thing to note is this is going to be a short-term problem that I believe could have long-term possible benefits. To be clear, the largest, and I know this doesn't directly have to do with anything about Russia, but like the idea that we just stick it only into gas, the largest record for they just had an energy auction. That's how they decide, because the U.S. government only has, actually, you know what, I'm going to get into this after. We don't take that much from Russia. If it is possible for us to turn up production, we should do that. However, I think focusing more on like subsidies and trying to keep the prices down through other means is the correct way to do it, because I think we have the ability to do that. These corporations can get fucked. And other than that, that's where I stand.
All right. Last but not least.
By the way, Fresh, I wasn't laughing at your take. I was laughing at the phrase soft gas release.
I didn't even hear
All
Yeah,
right.
I don't.
Jordan,
I
go
pretty
ahead.
much agree with everybody else's takes. I don't know where we get this oil from to send over to Europe. I'm definitely, as an environmentalist, not in favor of more drilling and more fracking. I'm not in favor of dropping sanctions, though, however. So I think that we should continue the economic sanctions on Russia, and I think we should continue to supply Ukraine with military aid.
All right. So before we
That's
open up
pretty much it.
to the panel here, I do want to note that apparently there are some U.S. senators who feel differently than the rest of us. They seem to think that there are
That's weird.
Surprise!
that there are quite a bit.
Politicians don't agree with us?
There's quite a bit of extra drilling that can be done. In fact, Two Republican senators who masquerade as Democrats, John Tester from my state of Montana and Joe Manchin from the state of West Virginia, were both in a press conference, I think just yesterday, talking about
Fans of the show.
about how they need to, how the Biden administration needs to start opening up more drilling, especially on public lands. They are very much advocating for it. Also, Tester, again, from my state of Montana, was very upset when Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline through our state of Montana. So he has been consistent on this train of drill, baby, drill. So there are some who think that there is plenty to do here in America. And if that is the case, should drilling happen?
Well, the one thing I'd ask is if we went back and look at these two politicians' finances, we might find some familiar names donating to them, and they might know where their implications come from.
Dude, this is my favorite. I hate Joe Manchin. If there was a poster boy for corruption in the government, it's Joe Manchin. Besides the fact that he personally, either he or his son personally own like one of the worst coal plants in West Virginia, his daughter is directly responsible for like doubling the price of EpiPens, and my brother had to use an EpiPen for a while, so I know exactly how much that cost. And I think that the entire family should be in jail. But other than that, Joe Manchin is the most infuriating person because nothing he says makes any sense in reality, because if he killed Build Back Better supposedly because of inflation, there's few things that would cause more inflationary harms than what he is proposing. And also, I want to remind Joe Manchin that his state is like the number one state that would benefit from a shift away from fossil fuels into green energy, from just like a whole plethora of reasons, including the fact that the coal miners there said, please go away from coal. Our jobs aren't coming back anyway. And they're like 49th in healthcare.
And they've like permanently poisoned the entire environment of the state.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't do this anyway. Like the military just poisoned Alaska's water supply, or not Alaska, Hawaii's water supply. That was a fun story.
I heard about that.
Like,
yeah.
Smooth.
The real answer to this is actually more government. So there's two things that here I want to get to.
I know Tom's not going to like that answer.
I was like, oh, here we go.
No, I understand some people don't like the government. I believe that the government can do some good things. There's two things. One is the U.S. government just did a massive auction of energy. It was let me get the actual number. It was $4.37 billion for the rights to build wind turbines more than 3 miles off the coast of New York and New Jersey. That's the largest investment in wind energy in history for land. Now, the reason this thing exists, and this is not, I'm not the first person to think of this. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I was actually watching the Ryan Grimm thing on this like yesterday, and I pre-guessed what he was going to say. There's a fuck ton of money relying on just basically waiting for tax breaks to exist so that they can start investing into green energy. And they could just do that, and we would start dealing with this problem. This is the most frustrating thing to me about the State of the Union. I know this is all over the place. I apologize. Is that no point have they pointed out to the fact that like whole crisis would not be as bad on America if we just like invested in things that weren't oil. You can't say, oh, we should just invest in we should have no ties and then just do all these things Americans, because we don't have the resources for that. I think to run this country without a foreign investment or like Middle Eastern and Russian investment, we have enough resources for like half a decade. Like if we totally isolated, we would have enough gas for like half a decade.
So I want to ask
do that.
North Countryman or Tom, whoever wants to answer, my two panelists who said that they were both, right or center right on the political spectrum. How do either of you feel about Fresh Face's declaration that the answer is more government?
I disagree with everything that Fresh Faces says usually in general. But one thing that he said that was interesting that I kind of like is the idea that a lot of green companies are waiting for tax breaks. Like, companies don't do things unless it's economical. I don't think that's the right word, but I don't care. Right now, price of oil is over $100 a barrel. But that is directly because of the Russian thing. And investing in trying to pull more oil and gas out, that's probably going to last longer than the Russian conflict will last, as far as I see it. So it'd be a big investment for prices that are probably not going to stay where they are, and oil prices they gotta be in the hundreds for big expansions like that to be profitable. That wasn't an answer to the question you had, but that was what was on my mind.
Well, let me add a different element to the conversation really quickly here. So we know that Russia gets a huge chunk of their income from being able to export oil and gas. Now, regardless of how we all feel about green energy, the fact of the matter is that our current system is designed to operate on, fossil fuels. So you're asking certain countries in Europe, if they cut off Russia, you're asking some of these countries in Europe who heavily depend on Russia's natural, natural gas and oil to go without electricity. Now, North Countryman mentioned the part about heat, but that's just one aspect of it. What about electricity and how that would affect people who may be currently in hospitals? Like, for instance, when people in the Gulf, when they would get hit by a hurricane, how many people's lives were essentially in jeopardy because they didn't have access to electricity in hospitals? That's just one example, but I think you know where I'm trying to go with it here. Without electricity in those countries, you're talking about millions of people who could essentially, die without electricity access. So are we willing to subject those people to that by not drilling more? Knowing that, even if you want to build this green infrastructure, you can't build it fast enough before Russia kills people in Ukraine. It's a little more complicated of a subject than I think we might be thinking about it.
It's almost one of the reasons why.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's almost like, which lives do we value more? The people that could die because they lost electricity, or the people dying in Ukraine because of the conflict and we haven't put enough sanctions on them?
That is the debate. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the right to say one way or the other. I still stand by the whole sanctions are the best thing we can do, and including oil. If there's countries that would entirely lose their medical system because of this, that's catastrophic. I would do humanitarian aid for them immediately, assuming I have the power to do that. Aside from that, there's not really much I can say. It's kind of a lose-lose.
Right. So I've been seeing this as kind of I think it has to be like a dual-pronged approach. I mean, on one hand, if you really are hell-bent on cutting off Russia's access to being able to sell their oil and natural gas to countries like Germany, Italy, other places in Europe, then if you are going to frack more here in America in the interim to supplement Europe, you have to do that alongside of making it an equal, if not greater, investment in clean energy infrastructure, not just solar and wind, power plants, but also transmission lines, which seems to be the biggest hiccup from keeping these things from coming online here in America right now. We don't actually have the transmission line. So it'd be the equivalent of planting a bunch of apple trees and only having one fucking truck to distribute the fucking apples. So they're just dying on the fucking branch. We don't have the transmission lines to actually sustain this new green infrastructure we're trying to build. So until you build that alongside of it, then all the actual solar and wind plants that you build they just go nowhere, which Vermont is figuring out right now as they've been building up these plants over and over again, and they had to actually stop building them because their current system can't actually handle any more electricity. So it's a fucked up catch-22, because on one hand I'm I don't want to see any more fracking done, but if we don't frack, then does Germany and Italy have to keep buying Russia's fucking oil and gas? I mean, is that where we're really at right now?
Only we had a president with a generational level of investment into infrastructure that was then diluted, and then we actually put the actual generational level of effort into the infrastructure in order to build the infrastructure required for green energy, or just make the general infrastructure. But here's the thing: when you talk about the power lines, here's what I want the ones they have in Japan, where they built them into literally giant looking robots that are like this, and they have fucking glowing eyes and shit. It's super funny. Fucking let's build Gundam power lines.
Bro, you can't even get healthcare.
I see no problem with this.
Yes, I
Once
understand.
again, Japan's providing all the solutions that the U.S. should implement.
I mean, I guess. Look, it is
low-key catgirl argument.
you're right. It is a hard thing to judge which countries are going to lose the best power. But I'm going to be honest. Like with the sanctions thing, it comes very similar to I would rather people get hurt by the sanctions than die from war. That's where it comes to that. And as for like figuring out how to get power, I don't know. You would have to do some combination of like the oil reserves, maybe cutting back on some of the other excess stuff and rationing. I mean, it's not like we haven't rationed shit before. I imagine like it would be unpopular. Certainly would be unpopular for the current parties in power, which unfortunately in places like Germany is just became their like Green Party, or like places in America where we actually need like a pretend Democratic Party to stave off what is currently happening in the Republican Party. It is an unfortunate time to have to like ask people to sacrifice what we basically spent the last 2 years watching the largest, softest set of babies complain about putting on a fucking mask. Like it's so frustrating that like so many of these problems could be fixed by like just having a better messaging system to push a mobilization effort that would actually solve like 7 or 8 of the problems at the same time. And we're just like, Joe Manchin loves his coal money.
Joe Manchin needs another yacht, bro.
Why will no one think of Manchin?
Will somebody please think of the billionaires?
Please.
That's what Laura Ingraham. I'm not even shitting you. That was actually Laura Ingram's argument when they were stealing the yachts. They're like, what if they do that here? I mean, to be fair, Betsy DeVos's family is really hurting because Eric Prince hasn't figured out how to get into this conflict yet. But like, they did have to sell off one of their 10 yachts. So
I couldn't imagine the pain. I just couldn't imagine.
Yeah, how dare the government do that? All right, so. Actually, there is one last thing I want to ask everyone before we get out of here. Just, quick little to the open panel. There has been a lot of conversation about the fact that the U.S. should increase, and I mean increase, military spending now because of this conflict. Does anyone have an argument for or against that? Actually, I want to start with North Countryman. I haven't heard you speak in a little while. Actually, no, Tom, I want to hear your on this first, then North Countryman.
There's absolutely no reason we need to increase spending in this. It's been an absolute windfall for these military contractors when they see this stuff happen. I believe pretty much anybody in Europe who's got guns pointed right now just re-up their contracts. They are all redoing their weapon systems. This is the best case scenario they could have hoped for. They want it to move as close to nuclear war as possible, so you buy everything you need right before that moment happens. And they're just going to keep pushing things to be more and more dangerous. So no, I think we need to spend less, just 100% less.
Absolutely. You got people like on CNBC and shit that are like salivating at Northrop Grumman or fucking Raytheon. They're like, oh my god, the stock is soaring. They're doing so well.
Oh, they do that stock ticker all the time. North Countryman, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit quiet. I had to respond to some people who needed an urgent answer. The reason I don't think we should spend more on military is usually when we do that, it goes towards stuff and not towards people. And when you put more money towards stuff, yeah. Well, when you put it more towards yeah,
trucks and toys.
When you put it more towards stuff, you end up with mission creep where you just forget what your actual goal was. You're like, let's get more stuff. Like, no, let's actually focus on doing things. If you pay attention to the, just as an example, pay attention to the Star Wars movies. Anytime the Empire built a Death Star, it just blew up. But when they focused on Star Destroyers, they conquered Hoth like that. Like, focus on your
I'm pretty sure the actual Star Destroyer army did not win at the end of the last one.
A lot of them died, but they were better than the Death Stars, okay?
This is true.
Again, they had that Death Star.
So they had a better track.
They had also specific orders to just keep the Rebel fleet in that spot so they could use the Death Star to blow it up. They weren't using all of their power. Like, they probably could have won just outright. Nope. Emperor wanted to show off.
What if the Pentagon came out and said that they wanted to increase the budget so that they could send fighter jets to Ukraine? Would anyone be okay with
Decommissioned
that?
fighter jet.
Like you got thousands already. Do you want more extras to send just in case? Because you don't want to waste the ones with dented paint.
I'm
Like,
just imagining
no.
conversations that will eventually be popping up on Fox News the next week.
Okay, first
Yeah,
off, like,
yeah.
if we're gonna take what the Pentagon says as a danger, then we should be definitely putting money into green energy, because they have already come out and said that's like the number one future problem that's going to face America's national security. So if we're gonna care about the budget for them, then that's what they should be putting it in. And one more thing to the budget. So I think the projected budget for this was around $800 billion.
Yes.
For the record, the last one was $35 billion higher than Trump's, and $25 billion extra for what they asked for. And that extra $35 billion over a 10-year period would have covered up the entirety of what the CDC or the CBO said would have been the excess waste for the passage of the current, or whatever the Manchin version of the Build Back Better program was, over a decade. So just leaving it there for those 10 years would have kept that. And finally, if we pass something around the same size to the $800 billion range, that would have been $1.5 trillion over a 2-year period, which is essentially larger than the 10-year investment that would have supposedly destroyed the country. So, like, no, the military can get fucked. They have more than enough money. I'm going to take a conservative argument with this. The existence of the Second Amendment proves that you don't need to be spending this much money in the military, because if every country isn't going to invade, if Jim, Bob, and Nance down the corner is armed, you don't need to be spending it building F-15s.
I saw that take. I saw that take on Fox News like a couple days ago, where they said that, like, that would never happen in America because we're all armed. And I was just like, so you're openly saying we don't actually need to be putting as much money into the military then, because we're all armed.
Good luck shooting the drone. Yeah, good luck with that.
They say all the right parts. They just say them on different days and don't connect the dots.
Dude, fucking Jim Jordan almost came to the point of, like, I don't remember if it was healthcare or green energy. It's like always crazy. Like this is kind of off topic, but like you can agree. Like I imagine North and I agree on a lot of problems. I don't know how many of the solutions we agree on. I think we kind of agree on a bunch of them. But like there are people who are like on the total opposite side of me who agree on the same problem, and I would be willing to work with them if their solutions weren't just like the Jews' fault.
Yeah.
You can acknowledge the problem, and then the solution is what matters.
I even think Ukraine stands as a great example of why a small army has been incredibly effective. I mean, look what happens when an army a tenth the size of another one kicks its ass. Do we really need to buy more, or should we just worry about quality?
Well, they're also defending versus attacking.
Well, yeah, then we're assuming that, like, if America gets invaded,
over the long haul, they're not going to win.
No, obviously.
Yeah,
like,
that's something
like when we talk about like the Ukraine stuff.
Really quick.
I was just going to say that's something I wanted to ask before when you were saying how well it's been going for the Ukrainians versus Russia. I was going to ask, is this even sustainable though? Because I've seen all projections like it's going good now, but they're not built for the long haul. So where does that lead?
It depends on which side you're asking. Like the Russians are losing a heck of a lot here too, but the Ukrainians are on the losing end. They're just being beaten out, outgunned, outmanned, out-resourced. The real thing to pay attention to when it comes to Russian losses is the actual monetary cost of everything. Because we've got actual figures for tanks lost, aircraft lost, all of that. And we can put that down into dollars and cents. Reported ones, We go with what's reported from both the Ukrainian and American military intelligence, which I am willing to actually trust here. They've been nailing it over and over again so far. I even did a couple days ago. I took their numbers, crunched it down to actual US dollar cost. I even knew what tanks that were being destroyed. It was I forget the name of a T-90 or something like that, a specific model of tank. Right. I generalized the cost of like military vehicles because that's all over the board. And I think it was 4 days ago we were sitting at over $1 billion American lost just in equipment. Yeah. So that's what really matters. Russia can't replace that so easily. Ukraine is just getting it handed to them for free.
That's true.
There's another point I want to talk about that. it comes about like their losses. Like we know that they aren't like set. Like their chain of commands and their ability to like set the stuff up. We see their equipment isn't great. So like even if they're losing this, it's fine. But like there's other aid. Like there's two things. So one, I think at one point they said like 2 days ago they had fired something like 250 rockets like throughout the entirety of this conflict. Or during the last like in the beginning of last year when the Israeli conflict fired off, I think the Taliban fired more missiles than that, than the entire Russian military fired. This conflict, and they're basically building bottle rockets in sheds. Like we're not even like comparing. And then this is the other reason I wanted to bring that up. This second nation led by a Jewish person, and it's kind of weird that the preeminent Jewish nation has not offered them the fucking Iron Dome, which would would have obliterated basically all those 200 rockets. Because anytime a rocket comes near Israel, they fire 1,600 missiles, and it just blows up. And then they fire like 6 more into Gaza.
Overkill.
Just for fun.
Well, Israel
Yeah,
has
like-
been somewhat aligned with Russia, so they are taking more or less a neutral.
Well, they're meeting with them today, apparently.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, apparently the Israeli president is meeting with Putin today.
All right, is everyone kind of
look,
ready
I
to
don't
go
know
into
where-
closing statements? All right, I'm gonna actually start down here at my bottom with Tom. Just go ahead and just give your final thought on this whole conversation, and then where everyone can find you at, podcasts, social media, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so I guess in closing, the best thing we could do in all this is offer some aid to a country, but I also just don't know how long we should prop them up. I'm concerned they can't make it in the long run, and I don't know what sanctions is going to do to really slow down Putin. So it's hard to say that any of these attempts we take are good for anything, but really what I think we need to focus on is making sure things don't escalate. Like, whatever we can do to make sure things don't get worse than it is currently. That's got to be the goal.
All right,
Because I can get.
and where can everyone find you at?
Oh yeah, check me out on the Winner Gets Nothing podcast. Yeah,
All right, and
and Twitter. Sorry, at Winner Gets No Pod. Yeah, I'm active on there. See you.
find them on Twitter. All right, Six, how about you? You're next.
Well, I'm actually quite glad that all of us pretty much agree on the main thing, that Russia is at fault, and the best thing is to not antagonize, just support Ukraine, as much as some of us may disagree on how we support Ukraine. I'm glad it's come to that. I think we are doing the best thing right now with not militarily poking the bear, I guess you could say, and just playing the long game with Russia. They will collapse long before we do. It was great getting a chance to meet everyone, and Tom, your mic sounds amazing, I must say. You can find me at Six Samurai, twitch.com. It just has X's in front behind because someone stole my name like a jerk. We usually do the gaming stuff, and yeah, thanks for letting me come on.
All right, thank you, North Countryman.
So bottom line on the whole Ukraine situation is I look at it, kind of like a poker game. Ukraine had a single pair. Russia had 2 pair. NATO had a straight. U.S. is sitting at 4 of a kind. And Russia just kept on bluffing and bluffing and bluffing. Ukraine is looking like, I can't keep anteing up in this. But U.S. and NATO are like, yeah, we're fine. We can take you. But now, cards have been thrown down, and Russia's pissed and is trying to throw up the table. But, got to have international norms. Got to let the game keep on going. Make things happy. So ultimately, Russia's not going to come out on top of this. The only they're going to eventually run out of steam, and the only question is, well, where in Ukraine will they be when that happens, and how much of that are they going to have to give back? So it's a bit of a waiting game, but I think the West's ultimately going to win. You can technically find me at twitch.tv/North Countryman. I've not been doing a lot lately just because I'm focusing on other stuff, including IRL politics, which is fun. But I'm also on Twitter at North Countryman with a 0. If I'm doing something, that's where you'll see it first. So follow me there.
All right, and Jordan, you're next.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on again, Desmond. I really enjoyed chatting with all you guys about these really important topics. You can find me at 805 Uncensored Pod on Instagram or 805 Uncensored on Twitter. I'm also on YouTube at 805 Uncensored Podcast or any of the other major podcasting platforms. And I'm always looking for new listeners, so I'd appreciate it if you check me out.
All right, short and sweet. Appreciate it. Fresh faces, new ideas.
Look, I'm well long-winded. I know a lot of things that aren't totally related to the topic. I do follow a lot of this pretty well. I'm always happy to talk to any of the guys on the panel after this for any other topics if they want. I don't know music, so if those are guys who focus on music, I can't really help you there. Yeah, look, I think we're in a lot of agreement on this. Russia is the antagonist for this. You can make some type of maybe argument about NATO. As for the U.S. involvement, I think we're pretty clear boots on the ground or some type of no-fly zone, which would lead us to a direct conflict with Russia, is a terrible idea all around. As for the energy stuff, I don't know exactly how much we have. I'm not an energy expert. I think this is legitimately the best reason to push for a green energy economy. I don't think there's any more reason. If you want, you can even couch it in terms of America first. Like, it would be so easy. The messaging for this is so frustrating that, like, 40 people behind a computer could figure this out, but people who are paid millions of dollars to do this can't figure it out. This is partly why the Republicans in my area told me to go away, because I told them they were bad at winning elections and I could help them win, and they said no. I enjoyed this. You guys can find me at Fresh Faces New Ideas on Twitch, and you can find me at Faces Ideas on Twitter. I think we're going to be doing more panels with Desmond in the future. I will be on the one tomorrow, so I will see you guys there. But yeah, anyone who wants to talk about something after this is always welcome. I'm not as available as I used to be, but we'll make time and we'll figure it out.
All right. And of course, I'm Desmond Price. This is Independent Thought. If you are watching this video on YouTube in the future, there will be links to everyone's channels and social medias in the episode description. So go ahead and just click down to see everyone's links. We will be having more panels in the future. So if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to see the future panels. Everyone who's on the panel tonight has an open invitation to come back in the future. So please use it if you want to. Thank you for everyone who's been listening and watching tonight. You can find me and the rest of my podcast on basically any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify. I am on social media at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Independent Thought. Thanks for everyone for coming here tonight, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace, guys.